So right now, our school improvement strategy has been expensive, right? Overcoming hyper-segregation with money is expensive. And we've shown that funding our way out of segregation, it just doesn't have a strong track record of success anywhere, but especially in our community. So this is a scatter plot, hopefully. Yes, there's a scatter plot. And it shows the relationship between students who are proficient and free reduced lunch status. So there is a strong negative relationship. This means that it's possible to predict a child's proficiency with a good deal of accuracy based on their free reduced lunch status. This scatter plot shows the relationship between per pupil expenditure and students qualifying for free reduced lunch. So here's a moderate positive relationship. This means that schools that have a high level of students who qualify for free reduced lunch receive more money per pupil, which is the weighted student funding. This next scatter plot shows the relationship between students who are proficient and per pupil expenditure. There's a strong negative relationship. This means that schools that have high per pupil expenditure have low performance. So this series of scatter plots shows us what the literature and anecdotal evidence has shown us. We can't fund our way out of hyper-segregation. Money is necessary, but insufficient. And there's nothing magical about middle-class children sitting next to a child who is living in poverty. It's about resources, and not financial resources, but also human resources and social capital. So student assignment in 2016 brings an opportunity for our community. We can take a good look at the research, the literature, the inputs and outcomes of our schools and our community, and we can make some choices, right? It's choice time. We can choose to avoid isolation. But as Fergie talked about, this choice has to be conscious, and it has to be made by our community together. Choosing to avoid isolation requires courage and vigilance. Wake County is a really good example of this. They have made the choice over and over. They are making this choice right now. Their community came together in the 90s and voluntarily chose to assign students to avoid concentrated schools of poverty. There was never a quarter desegregation plan. And in 2010, the student assignment their plan was modified. And since that time, Wake County has experienced an increase in high poverty schools. So as a community, they are grappling with this change in their data. So it's important to note that choice doesn't come with a prescription. There are hundreds of districts across the United States that have voluntary plans, voluntary student assignment plans that prioritize diversity. These communities have chosen to avoid isolation. Each district does this in a really different way. No plan is the same. So our neighbors up the road, up 85, they use a controlled choice plan. It relies heavily on magnet schools, school siting, non-traditional school calendars, and busing. Montgomery County, Maryland, on the other hand, is one of the most diverse and high-performing school districts in the nation. They don't use buses at all. Their community came together 3 decades ago and instituted housing policies that supported their community and their schools. Decades later, these policies have supported a vibrant economy and diverse, high-performing schools. So there are countless models to learn from and options yet to be imagined. So this is the part that I'm being brave. I haven't rolled this out before publicly, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to be received, so here it goes. Figured you were a gentle crowd tonight. I am frequently asked about opportunities and options for student assignment. I'm obviously not a geographer. All these pretty maps were not made by me. I am not an expert in designing student assignment plans. I am not the finger plan. That is not me. There are people who do that, like the plan that we exist in our salon that Fred talked about. But that is not what I do. But I was thinking creatively, and here's some ideas. So one place, if I were to design a plan like this that would address our hypersegregation, one place I would start would be looking at our magnet schools. So right now, all of our full magnets are located in the center city area. So anywhere you see a dark blue dot on the map, that means that children in those neighborhoods are bused to other schools in the area. So for example, I live off of Central Avenue. There are 3 schools within 2 miles of our house that are full magnets. So locating most of these full magnets in one part of the county has a few unintended consequences. It means that my neighborhood doesn't really have a school located in or around the neighborhood that kids can go to. It also means that my child doesn't have access to the closest school geographically, because my child can't attend these schools without literally winning the lottery, because these schools have long wait lists. I'm usually not lucky with things like that, and I'm not banking on that for my child's education. It also means that schools aren't able to take advantage of the natural diversity that occurs in this part of town. So just to be clear, I'm not complaining about this. I know where I live, and I'm okay with it, but I'm pointing out that this is a reality and possibly an opportunity. So if we were to transition some full magnet programs out of the center city, this would create enrollment opportunities that could capitalize the natural diversity in some parts of town while reducing concentrated poverty in other parts of town. So strategically placing and citing magnet programs, both full and partial magnets, could best serve our kids and our community. So another example of student assignment options comes from this map that we saw earlier in the presentation. So there are schools so this map shows the 10 most isolated white schools. No, this is, so this map shows the 10 schools with the highest reduced lunch population, 10 schools with the lowest, and then the 10 most balanced schools. So as you can see, there are some dots that are different colors that are very close to each other. And this is something that's interesting in our community. We have schools of concentrated poverty really close by schools of concentrated affluence. What an opportunity. It's called paired schooling. This meant that neighborhoods and school boundaries were paired together, so students traveled together through school. I'm a product of this. So when I went to desegregated schools, I also went to neighborhood schools. I didn't necessarily attend schools in my neighborhood, all K through 12, but I did attend school with kids from my neighborhood, kindergarten through 12th grade school. So this misnomer that you can't have desegregation and neighborhood schools, I don't quite buy it, because it definitely wasn't my experience, and then the literature doesn't support it. But the demographics of our county really lend itself well to options such as this. So options would need to be based on neighborhood demographics and transportation arteries. This is where roads and thoroughfares and timed lights are very important. That would need to be put into this plan. But it's a possibility. And it's a possibility that could eliminate schools with concentrated educational disadvantage. And it's important to note that this map only looks at 30 out of 91 elementary schools. So there are many, many opportunities for parents. So we also have the opportunity to create school boundaries that make a little bit more sense. Myers Park High School, for example. I live off of Central Avenue. Myers Park High School is my high school. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So this boundary is obviously not very symmetrical, and it's not very sensible when you look at transportation arteries. For example, me, I'm on the other side of Independence. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but some boundaries make a lot of sense, like Audrey Kell. Doesn't that make sense? You look at that map and you're like, wow, that boundary makes a lot of sense. But then others do not. This is my favorite. Kind of looks like some of our congressional districts. Harding High School. So the red dot is where the school building is, on the very edge of the boundary. The county overview in the corner is particularly telling. And while I'm not advocating for the overhaul of every school boundary of our 164 schools, I am advocating for our community to come together and talk about options for our kids. Because clearly some of our boundaries could use a little love. They don't work for our kids or our community. Definitely not our neighborhoods. So, as you leave, I hope you have a little bit more hope. And I hope that you will imagine, what would it take to eliminate hyper-segregated schools in our community? What would it take to offer educational opportunity to all of our kids? As we heard tonight, our community's made this choice before. So what would it take to make it again? Let's imagine together. Thank you.